Good morning. How you guys doing? Good. I hope you enjoyed the video. Just a little reminder that Christmas is almost here. Are you guys prepared for Christmas? No. Okay. That's all right. I was going to have raise hands, but I don't think it's necessary now after that. You know, that means presents, right? We have to buy presents. We receive presents. And has anybody here completed their Christmas shopping? No hands? Nobody dares? A couple of you? Okay, we hate you. Everyone else is sitting there going, all right, well, no, some of us still have some last-minute presents to get, so I thought I'd come up with a few last-minute present ideas if you haven't come up with one yet. I tried to look, and I guess because it's the year of COVID, there's not a lot of really cool, neat things out there, but there's some weird fascination right now with faces, your own face. And so what you could do is you can go to myfacesocks.com. Go ahead, honey, put that up there. This is a real website, and you can put your own face on your socks. And it's pretty popular, too. If you go on Instagram and social media, you see a lot of stars and celebrities putting their faces on their socks. But you can get one of those, and I thought, why are they doing this? And then you can also get one of the pillowcase. Wait, go to the pillowcase first. Then I want to come back to that one. So you can get it on a pillowcase shaped like a superhero, and it'll put your image on there, and that way someone will always think it's you. That would probably be creepy, because if you're ever sitting on your couch and sometimes you see like a figure and you get shocked, right? And you actually see a face, that would be kind of odd. But then this one here is even cooler. You can get your girlfriend's face, I guess you could do your own too, on your shirt, just to remind you who you belong to. And she'll probably get that for you, or you can get that for your girlfriend, and that way they can't like hit on anybody, and they'll keep you away, but you could do that right there if you wanted. And if you're not into your own face or whatever, you might want to get a Baby Yoda scrunchie. Those we got right there. Yeah, I'm thinking of buying that for my daughters because they love Baby Yoda. Now, you know, when I was younger, we used to put a list together, just like my kids put a list together for us. And my wife is pretty wise. She gives them magazines, and they cut them out, and they paste them on a paper, so we kind of get an idea of what they want. And for some, they really know what they want. And like Charlotte, I think it is. And then the other one, the Gwenny, it keeps changing over time. We're never quite sure what she wants until the last minute. But my grandmother one time asked me, she said, John, what do you want for Christmas this year? And I said, I really want a stereo radio. Now, forgive me, we're going to go back a little bit. When there was radios, and then there were stereo radios. You guys remember the boom boxes, right? You'd carry them on your arm like that. Well, a radio is mono, one speaker. Stereos were two speakers, all new technology that was coming out. And I was like, I know, it's old, but I really wanted the stereo, really bad. And so I even got the catalog for whichever store it was that she was going to go to. It was probably Radio Shack. I don't even remember. And I circled the one I want. And I said, I called her Ma. I said, this is the one I want. Please get me this. And so she took that. And she went shopping with my aunt that day. And so I was like, okay. Christmas comes. My present's in front of me. I'm so excited. I'm going to get that stereo. I'm going to be so cool. I'm going to play my tunes. I was going to be able to put my cassettes in there. Yes, cassettes. And play the songs I wanted to and record from there. That's what you could do. You could actually record onto your cassette and dub your own tape, right? So that you could carry it with you. And I'm so excited for it. Yeah, this is the boombox right here. And then I opened it up, and this is what I got. Flip it. This is not a stereo. This is a radio. I did have the tape recorder. This is like the exact one that I got. And I looked at it, and I literally almost cried. And I'm only like 10 years old, and my aunt is looking at me, and my grandmother's like, is that okay? Is that all right? And because I loved my grandmother so much, and I didn't want to disappoint her, I said yes, and I just kind of choked it down. I'm like, I'm not going to admit it. And then I found out my aunt went with her, and my aunt had said to her, it's okay, don't pay more. Buy this cheaper one, and it'll be all right. He won't even know the difference. And I was like, oh, they could kill you, Auntie, for doing that. Like inside, I'm like, oh, why did you do that? She had asked me. I told her. She got me. You asked me what I wanted. You shouldn't have asked me what I wanted if you weren't going to get it. It's kind of one of those things. And I was just like, I felt so disappointed. Have you guys ever gotten a Christmas gift that you didn't want, you didn't like, and you were expecting something more or something different? right? That happens in our lives. And sometimes we expect the most from the people who know us best, don't we? My wife drops hints all the time, and she's wondering if I ever catch those hints, I think. And then she's like, well, I really wanted this. And sometimes I get her stuff she doesn't even know she wants. And then 2 years later, after she's gotten the gift, she finally realizes, I really wanted this gift. I bought her this cast iron pot that is amazing. She uses it like almost every meal. And she didn't use it for like months because she's like, I don't really need a cast iron pot. And I'm like, I think you want this cast iron pot. And I got her some other things too in the past, and she doesn't really realize she wants them. But what happens is we expect people to get us things that we like, especially if we just told them what we wanted, right? And if you've ever experienced that, you've experienced this big letdown. And it really does let us down, right? Our expectations don't get met. And then it starts to form our opinion about the person who was supposed to get it from us. Like from then on, I never trusted my aunt. I always knew she was going to get me the cheaper version of whatever it was, right? So I wasn't ever going to ask her to get me the thing that I wanted. But the same thing sometimes can happen to us when it comes to God. We can have these high expectations of God. I mean, at least that's what we're told to expect, isn't it? I mean, we come to church and we're told that He can make you feel better, that God can give you the answers that you're looking for, that God's going to help you in your situation and make it turn out right. We even say that God can perform miracles. I mean, after all, He is God, right? And yet sometimes we don't experience God in that way. And when we don't experience God in that way, it can cause us to wonder. Maybe we're thinking, we're just not doing this God thing right. Maybe that's it. I mean, other people seem to be experiencing Him. Why am I not experiencing Him? I mean, every one of us has been there at some point in time in our lives just saying, well, God, they seem to have something, and you seem to pull through from them, but why isn't it happening to me? And we start to wonder, am I the problem? Is it me? Am I the problem? Maybe it's my lack of faith. Maybe it's just that I don't see you. And so since we can't kind of crack the code on God, we still believe kind of that God shows up. It's just that He's not going to show up for you and me. And so deep down inside, we end up wondering, God, are you really the God that everyone is saying that you are? And if you feel that way, you're not the only one who's felt that way in their life. I think every single one of us, no matter who we are, you're not different than the person sitting next to you, even the guy up on stage. You're not any different than us. Every one of us at some point has had life not go our way. And in those moments, we've kind of sought God, and we're waiting for Him, and we think that maybe He's going to be the answer. We've waited for His answer, or we've waited for the situation to turn around, or we waited to God to show up in that circumstance. But despite these moments, it doesn't mean that God wasn't there, or that He wasn't working in our lives. And I think that we can all have and experience the God the way we want to, the way God is. And yeah, to be honest, maybe there is a little bit of us. Right? Maybe there's a little bit of us involved because sometimes we're not always looking for the God that's looking for us. It's possible for us to have the relationship and to understand God, who He is, and it's probably a lot easier than we thought. But the solution may be a little bit different than you would think, and maybe it's a little bit more obvious sometimes than we think, and that's why we miss it. It's no secret, like I said, that we're heading into Christmas, and I hope we're all getting prepared. And this is the time that we expect God to show up, if you really think about it. I mean, over 2,000 years ago, He did show up. He became a man. And today, we're going to be talking about some of that story. We're going to be talking about three characters, not the 4 wise men that we saw on the video, but we're going to be talking about the 3 wise men, right, that we see in the Bible. Well, we call them the 3, but we're not 100% sure about that, to be truthful. And sometimes they're called the kings of the Orient. That's because they come from the East. And so today, we're going to dig into the story a little bit, and I think that these guys have a very important lesson when it comes to God showing up in our lives. And we find the story of these guys in Matthew chapter 2. So we're going to put it up here on the screen. It says, "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him.'" So they show up on the scene and they're looking for the King of the Jews. See, in the middle of this Christmas story, these guys show up and they've been following a star and they come all the way from the east. So before we can understand the message behind the three wise men, we have to understand a little bit more about who they actually were. You see, God had orchestrated these guys and this origin from a long time ago. Their story began actually hundreds of years earlier. See, their name was really, we get the word wise men, but they were called the Magi, or in Greek it was the Magio. And these guys it's just a Greek term where we get our term for magic, Magi, because they kind of did these things that were spiritual, and they looked into astrology, and they were kind of a special group of people, and they sought out wisdom, prophetic wisdom. And so eventually, this group of people become kind of like a priestly caste, and they become attached to some of the royal courts that of the previous empires that ruled the earth that we've talked about in the past, if you've been with us over the last year, the Babylonians and the Persians and even Arab and India. And their roots could actually be traced all the way back to a prophet named Balaam. You see, there's this time where Moses and the children of Israel are traveling through the desert from Egypt to get to the promised land. And as they're getting to the promised land, they go through this land called Moab. And Moab, there's a king named Balak. And Balak is worried about these guys because they're kind of hanging out before they go into the promised land. And he's worried that they're going to attack him, and they're going to attack the people of Moab. And so he asks a prophet named Balaam to come, and I'll pay you to come and curse the people of Israel. So Balaam agrees to go, and you may have heard the story of the donkey that speaks in the Bible. If you haven't, it's a fascinating story. But he's on his donkey. He's on his way to the mountaintop to meet Balak, and this mountaintop overlooks all the people of Israel, so he could stand up there and curse them. And the donkey's trying to keep him from going because there's an angel in his way that's going to slay him. And the angel actually starts talking to him as he's beating the donkey to keep him going forward. And the donkey's like, hey, leave me alone. Can't you see there's an angel in front of me that doesn't want you to go curse the people? But Balaam goes anyway. He asks God if he can go up there, and he says, sure. So he gets there, and then Balaam says to Balak, the king, he says, listen, I can try, but God's not going to curse the people, and I can't curse them. I can only do what God tells me to do. And so 3 different times this kind of story unfolds where he's going to bless them. And then he has this one interesting thing that comes out of his mouth. I put it in your outline. He says, I see him, but not now. I see him, the Savior, the King, but I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all the sons of tumult. And so he gives this prediction, and this influenced them because it's believed that they come from this kind of tradition from Balaam, passed on, and these wise men grow, and they take this tradition with them to look for this star. And it's handed down from generations to generations until the time of the Messiah. Now, 100 years later, they show up on the scene. And this is the first thing that I want you to learn from this story. So if you can pull out your outline, if you haven't already have it out, to fill it out. God is always trying to get your attention. God is always trying to get your attention. It might be slightly different in your outline, but God is always trying to get our attention. I mean, think about this. He uses a giant star to get their attention. There's some debate over what this star actually was, but if you really look at it and read it as it is in the Bible, literally, it's a giant star. We think that GPS is a 20th century invention. And if anyone ever tells you that, say, no. It's actually a first century invention. There was a giant star leading the way. That's what they had. Think about that. God didn't even leave it up to chance. Here it is. I'm going to show you exactly where to go and how to get there. You know, God couldn't have made it more obvious in their lives. He's like, look, I'm going to get your attention. When Jesus shows up on the scene, when the Messiah comes, and I want you to follow it. Here is the Son of God. And he'd been there all along, guiding them even before the star arrived. These guys just didn't show up all of a sudden. No, they come from this tradition. 1,400 years earlier was when Moses showed up. Hundreds of miles away, God was working all this time throughout history, bringing them to this moment. And God is like that in our lives. That's actually how God is and how he works. He uses stuff that we didn't even realize to get our attention. And at the right time and in the right moment, we see it. He's working behind the scenes. And in the appropriate time, we see it for what it is. I went to college at a very large university in Massachusetts, the University of Massachusetts. I mean, there's like 30 or 40,000 students there at any one time. And there's the different residential sections where you can live. And the one that I lived in was called Southwest, and there was over 7,000 people that lived in this one square block. And I lived in this tall tower, and one day, as I'm walking through the area, there was very big open courtyards and spaces. There was a table out there, as there often was, of people promoting different things. And as I walked up to this table, it was a group of people that were Christians, and they would sign up people if you'd like to hear somebody, have someone come to your room and tell you about the gospel, about Jesus Christ. Now, I would say at that time, I was barely a believer. I believed in God, I believed in Jesus Christ, but I wasn't doing anything that I should be doing. And so I walked up to this table and I thought, I'm going to sign up my friend. Won't that be funny if they show up on his door? I wasn't thinking about me, it's just to tell you where I was at spiritually, okay? So I signed up my friend Scott. And Scott happens to live on the same floor that I live on. Well, I signed him up and I had just forgotten about it because, it doesn't happen the next day or anything like that. But one day I'm sitting in his room and we're talking, and all of a sudden this guy knocks on the door. And he's like, hey, come on in. And he's like, hey, is your name Scott? Scott here? And I'm like, oh, wait, I think I know what this is. Why am I sitting here in this moment, right? I'm like, I don't want to be here for this. And the guy starts saying, hey, you signed up so we could tell you about Jesus and tell you about Christianity and the gospel. And Scott's like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling, you ever turn red in the middle of that? You think there's a spotlight on you because you're the one who did it. And I'm just feeling embarrassed and everything. And he's like, well, I guess you didn't. He's like, it happens all the time, to be honest. People sign up other people to come, and we show up. And he's like, well, we're going to lunch. We'll ride down in the elevator. Now, we were on the 10th floor of this 20-story building. So we get in the elevator, and we're talking, and the guy starts saying, yeah, I do ministry here. I used to go to school at the university, but then I thought I'd come back because there's so many people at this stage of life that really need to know God and know the gospel. And so we do these events out here, and we try to get people interested. And as I'm just sitting there listening, God was reminding me of what he had kind of placed in my heart. And I'm thinking, man, there was something compelling about what he was saying. And I'm like, man, God, I thought I was playing a joke on my friend, and you're showing up in my life. You're working in my life. And sometimes that's the way things happen. God shows up in these circumstances that we think are for somebody else, and it's really for us. And sometimes we almost miss it, but God will do that in our lives. See, God was working even when I wasn't. And God is doing stuff in your life right now, even when you don't know it. The good things in your life, he's working in. And even the bad things in your life, he's working in. That situation in your life, whatever it is that you're going through right now, maybe it's God trying to get your attention. Perhaps it's God saying, hey, knocking at the door, hey, I showed up here. And you know how many times we sometimes move past that, right? We let it happen, but we keep moving forward, and God will continue to do that in our lives. And maybe instead of trying to wish away the situation that we're in right now, maybe we should be wondering why it's in our life. Because oftentimes all we can do is focus on get this out instead of what are you trying to do in the midst of this, God? Because God uses everything in our lives for good. Paul was writing to the Romans, and that's exactly what he said to them. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. God says, I'm going to use all things no matter what they are, whether they're good or whether they're bad. I'm going to use it in your life, and I'm working it out for your own good, for your own benefit. You see, the thing you're experiencing may not have originated from God. I'm not saying that he started it. And we learned that a few weeks back when we were in our series, Accelerate. But what we do know is that God can use it regardless of where it came from, where it originated, for your good and for a purpose that he has for your life. And that's what God wants to do. And so there's more, though, to the story of the kings. It says when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the young child. And when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also." You see, it's important to understand some things about this story, not just the wise men, but we have to understand a little bit about Herod in order for us to really understand the message of the Magi. And that is that Herod, he's ruling in the area of Jerusalem. So they're going to come into the land of Israel. They go to the capital city at that time, the seat of their government, even though it's ruled by the Romans, but there's where all of the scribes and the Pharisees would have been hanging out. And they come there and they're looking for this king, and Herod is there as king. And he invites them over because he hears this thing. There is a king of Judah. Oh, wait a minute. You see, Herod started out as a slave. That's where he started, but he converted to Judaism. And in so doing, he decides to rule. He wants to rule. So he actually kills the royal family of the Hasmoneans. I know this is a little bit mysterious, but these were the guys who were actually ruling Judah at the time, like with power, in ruling them. And so he takes over, he kills them all, and he becomes the king. And when the Romans take over, they see that he's like ruling the land, so they automatically make him kind of the king, like a vassal king of the area. And so that's why Pilate also rules in Jerusalem. We hear about Pilate, but you also see Herod ruling as part of the king of the Jews, if you will. And according to the Talmud, though, he had been a slave and was not of Jewish blood, and so the Pharisees and the Jewish leaders didn't recognize him as their king, which made him really mad. And so he ended up killing a lot of the Jewish scribes and Pharisees, many of them, the ones that opposed him. So he would just kill them and wipe them out because this is how much he wanted to protect his kingdom. But he did keep one of the teachers alive of the law, and his name was Bava ben Buta. But to keep him, he blinded him so that he could subject himself to his kingdom. And so he was very paranoid. In fact, he was so paranoid, he ends up killing his own wife. And then his wife had given him 2 sons, but because eventually they're going to take over, and he thinks they might want to take him out, he takes them out first, and he kills both of his sons. So you can imagine how fearful everyone felt when these guys show up. Hey, where's the king of the Jews? What? Are you kidding me? Do you realize what you're saying? Herod's going to wipe you out. That's what they're all thinking. In fact, Herod was so crazy that he had designed and jailed many of the rulers of the Jewish people that were respected. He jailed them so that on the day of his death, he ordered them to be executed so that there would be rejoicing because he knew that people hated him. You see, it would be characteristically true that everyone would be troubled. But Herod just not only tried to ingratiate himself to the Jewish people, maybe he really did believe in God. We're not sure. We're not 100% sure, but we know that he wasn't following him closely. But whether he sought God or not, God was closer than Herod actually knew. And this is your second fill-in your outline. Though God seems distant, he is closer than we imagine. Though God seems distant in your life right now, he's closer than you imagine. That's the thing about God. He comes looking for each and every one of us. This is the essence of the Christmas story. And we're going to talk about that next week, but God becomes man so that he can identify with you and me. Think about that. He doesn't call us up, but he comes to us. He dwells with us. That's what Emmanuel means, God with us. Because we have a problem. You see, we have a hard time seeking God. I'm not saying finding God. We have a hard time seeking him. This is what Paul writes as he's wrote to the Romans in that same book. He says, there is none who understands, there is none who seeks after God. He says, there's nobody. He's quoting the Old Testament. He says, none of us actually truly seek God. We kind of think that we do, but we don't really seek him. We kind of do it for our own convenience when we need him. You see, we find God because he's already been seeking us. And sometimes God will make us so discontent that discontentment will drive us toward God, but we think we're seeking him, but it's really a reaction to what God has been doing in our lives, because it's him that's drawing near. You guys have kids, and I play this game, especially when the kids were younger. We do this kind of hide and seek thing, and what we would do is we just put the blanket over the kids, and then we go, where's Gwenny? Where's Gwenny? Has anyone ever seen Gwenny? Has anyone seen Gwenny? And she's right there giggling under the blanket, right? She thinks because she can't see us that we can't see her, right? We've all done it with our kids. And that's kind of the way it is sometimes with God. We like, because we can't see him, we think he's not right there, right? Then we pull up the blanket and go, oh, there's sweaty, and then she sees us. And it's like God pulls off the blanket for us because the truth is we don't always seek him, but he is right there all the time. See, there was a fundamental difference between the wise men and Herod. The wise men, and it's not just that he was a mass murderer and they weren't, the wise men were drawing closer to God and Herod wasn't. There was a heightened expectation of the arrival of the Messiah during this time period. You see, in the book of Daniel, that was written 500 years before the time of Christ, this is a time where Israel is in the Babylonian captivity. They've all been taken captive. And he's praying about Israel. He's praying about their nation. And he gets this revelation from an angel. The angel shows up and like, hey, Daniel, we've heard that your prayer. And I've come to answer and talk to you. And he says, look, there's this that I want you to know about your people. I put it in the outline here. It says, know therefore, he says to them, and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. You see, during the time when this was written, the Jerusalem has been decimated. Most of the people are in captivity. And he's saying, listen, David's praying about all this. He's asking for forgiveness. And he's like, I'm going to show up and tell you something about your future. He says that this is going to happen. The city's going to be rebuilt. The walls are going to be rebuilt. And we actually know when this decree happens. He says the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem. It was done by a guy named Artaxerxes, who we've all studied in Esther, Longinus, on March 14th, 1445 BC. So from the going forth of that, there'll be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And that's not a literal week like you and I understand it. It's actually a term for 7-year period. We know a decade as what? A 10-year period. This was a Jewish term called Shabuah. It was called a Shabuah, and that was referring to a 7-year period. And it's the same term that was used for Jacob when he worked to get his bride Rachel at 7 years. And he says, and Laban says to him, his uncle, work another 7 years, because he tricked him and gave him Leah instead. So work another 7 years and you'll get Rachel. And work another Shabuah and you'll get your wealth that you can have, and you can live your own life. So he works in the fields and gets his own shepherd, his own sheep. You see, this 7 years, there's 7 years and 62 years makes 69 weeks. And if you calculate that in the Jewish calendar, a guy named Sir Walter Anderson did that in his great book called The Coming Prince, where he does this. It turns out that from the day when Artaxerxes gave Nehemiah the command to go back and to build the walls of Jerusalem, they calculate this out in the Jewish calendar. It comes out to the day that Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, riding on the foal of a donkey, and they all worship him as king, the son of David. Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And that's when the Savior would come. You see, if you were a studier of the scriptures, just like these magi were, and maybe the Jewish scholars of the day, then they would have been expecting the Messiah to come. Because they knew this information, they knew this prophecy. So it wasn't like this should be unexpected in that moment. They were waiting and expecting the king. And so much so the Magi, they didn't just want to know that he showed up, they actually went to see him in person. They traveled 1,000 miles from the area of Persia and the area of the east to come all the way to Jerusalem and Bethlehem to see the king. I mean, that's like you and I walking from Washington, D.C. all the way to Cape Coral. I mean, think about that. Not drive your car, not fly a plane, not take a bus or drive or get on a train, right? That would be you and me deciding you're going to ride a donkey or a camel or walk. I mean, how many weeks would that take us to travel that far? And we would plan it, and we'd have to plan for the food, we'd have to plan for everything. It would take us so long. They go out of their way just so that they can see the king in person. You see, contrast that with Herod. Herod wasn't even aware that a king was coming. He was so crazy about now kings, of course he didn't want to even hear about it. You see, though Herod was Jewish, he didn't draw close or embrace their faith and their understanding. And that's the difference. Bethlehem was only 5 miles away from Jerusalem, by the way. He's in Jerusalem, 5 miles. I mean, you and I could walk that in a day. And yet, he did not seek him. Herod had been less than 5 miles away. It was right under his nose. He didn't even know him or experience him because he wasn't really seeking God. You see, God will get your attention. God is in our midst right now. But you won't experience him if you won't open your eyes and look for him. This is what the psalmist writes. The Lord is close to all who call on him. Yes, to all who call on him in truth. You see, if we call on him, if we seek him, then we will find him. And the Magi are looking for him. They're seeking him out, and they end up finding him. See, God will get your attention. You see, that's why Herod failed to find Jesus. That's why he failed to see him. Later on, he's going to try to wipe him out, but he never actually sees Jesus in the flesh because he didn't draw close to God in truth. But our story doesn't have to be Herod's story. And so this is just the rest of the story of the kings. So when they had heard the king, they departed. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. The Magi show up with their presents. They did not have hummus, but they showed up with the other things. And we don't really know how many there were, to be honest. We say there's 3 because there was 3 gifts. But it could have been a whole entourage of kings or Magi that came, these wise men. But what I find really amazing about their story is that after they show up, something supernatural happens in their life. Did you notice that? Did you notice they're divinely warned in a dream that they should return to Herod, not return to Herod? I mean, think about that for a moment. They take this little step toward God. God shows up in a big way. I don't know if they've ever experienced a miracle before. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced a miracle before like that. But they have this dream where God communicates directly to them. And this is part of your outline, point of your outline. The more you seek God, the bigger he shows up in your life. The more you seek him, the bigger he shows up in your life. In my experience, many Christians were a lot like Herod, to be honest. We're associated with God, but we don't really know him that much. We don't really know all that much about him. But we want to see the miracles. We want to experience him in a big way, but we don't take the time to actually get to know who he is. To get to know him the way he wants us to know him. We tend to draw close when there's something that's going on in our lives, or there's this concern that causes us to look for him, just like Herod. What? There's another king? Oh, this is a problem. Now I'm going to go look for him. Now you guys go, tell me where he is, and then I'll go find him. Right? And sometimes in our lives, when things are going good, we don't really bother. But when things are not working out so good, that's when we take our time to look for him. But God's not like you and me. He's not like that when it comes to you and I. He's constantly desiring to show up in our lives in ways that are meaningful. Listen to this verse from the book of Chronicles. God shows up among the mighty kings of Israel to deliver this message to a prophet. He says, "For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole world, to show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts is loyal to him." Each and every one of us wants to be this person that God shows up in their lives. And if you think about it, what it says here is not that he doesn't do it, his eyes are looking for us. God is looking for you, and he says, I want to show up big in your life. I want to do it in amazing ways for you. This verse actually tells us that God is looking for you and me, and he desires to do great things in our lives. You know, I moved to Florida probably over 24 years ago. And when I moved here, I was just kind of living my life. I kind of felt that God wanted more from me, but I didn't know what he wanted. And I'll be honest, I was kind of seeking him. But there came a point in my time I was working with my family and in a business, and I was thinking, man, I think there might be more. I think there might be more out there for me. And we ended up closing the business. And at this moment, I had just read this book. Someone had given it to me, and I was on a plane trip we were doing sales for my uncle in the Midwest. And I read this book. It's called Sometimes God Has a Kid's Face. And it was written by a Franciscan priest who had started an organization in New York City for runaway teens called Covenant House. And as I read it, I got to the end of the book. It said you can donate money. If you live close to one of the facilities, you can donate time. And then there was also this thing, you could give a year of your life if you wanted to dedicate yourself to these underprivileged kids. And there was also a commitment to prayer and communal simple living because they're not going to pay you, right? They got a small stipend. And I said, you know what? I could go right now. The sky's wide open in my life. And I'm like, God, I know you want to do something, but I don't know what it is. And sometimes we sit there waiting, not moving forward in our lives because we don't take a step in His direction. God sometimes is asking you and me, if we want to see Him show up big, that we have to take a step in His direction. And so I decided I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to sign up for it for a year. Some people thought I was crazy. But I signed up and they brought me, I applied in New York City, they trained me in New York City, and they sent me to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where they have one of their locations, and that's how I got to Florida. And from there, I started going to Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, which is a very large church. And I started taking kids, somebody else was taking kids, they were checking out a 15-seat van from the Covenant House and would take kids on Wednesdays and Sundays to the service. And they were our kind of times overlapped, and she wanted me to start doing it, so she started taking me to the church, and I really loved the church. And I thought, okay, I'll do it when you're gone. I kept doing it. And then they found out they had adult education classes, so I took some of those based on the Bible. And then I found out they had a Bible college, and I said, you know what, God, when my time is done, I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to take the Bible course. And that's what I did. And I look back at that moment, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life or what God wanted to do with my life. All I knew is I said, God, I'm just going to take a step in your direction. And when I took a step in His direction, God took 3 giant steps in my direction. And that's what God does. But sometimes it takes an element of faith on our part to step forward if we want to see God in a big way. Listen to what the writer of Hebrews writes. He says this, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who approaches Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. You see, stepping up, believing that God is going to work in your midst, sometimes is when we see God. Sometimes we give up on God because we don't see Him. We haven't heard from Him in a while. And so we're like, God, I don't know where you're at. Or we just don't bother, even though He's close to us. But God wants to see you every single day. It starts with waking up every day and seeking Him during the bad times and the good ones. If you continue that process, you will see God. That's what the wise men did. That's the lesson of the wise men. The closer, the more we seek Him, the more He shows up in our lives. You know, you guys are going to be getting and receiving a lot of Christmas cards this season. I hope you do. I don't know. We always send one out. But as I give one to my wife, what's the most important part of the card, do you think she reads? Is it the printed stuff that we buy or the handwritten stuff that we write, right? That's the most important stuff. That's why it's so much pressure for you and me when we're writing a card, right? Because sometimes we just don't feel like just writing Love John, right? Or Merry Christmas. We want to write a little bit more because we know that's the important stuff. You know, my wife didn't want you guys to know this, but today's her birthday. Yeah. Every time I write her a card, she reads every single word of it. I mean, she takes the time to look it over. You know, she forgets the text part, but she's looking at the other stuff. And sometimes she starts crying, and sometimes she gets emotional because it's revealing my heart to her, and she's just moved by it. She hangs on every word. Do you guys realize that the Bible is God's love letter to you and me? It's God's heart revealed to you and I. And when we grab that Bible, we grab a hold of it, and we say, God, I'm going to open it up today. I'm going to open up this Christmas card, this birthday card that you have for me, because inside God has handwritten the things that He wants you to know about Him, about His heart, about His love for you, about His faithfulness, about His character. And when we open that card, God comes and ministers to our hearts. And when we draw close to God, that's when He starts showing up in really huge ways. God has so much that He wants for you to know. So much that He has for you in your life, but sometimes we'll be like, go back 20 years where I'm just sitting there living my life, not doing too much. Because I'm not really sure what He wants. And maybe each of us, and we've all been there, even today, I'll tell you right now, I'm still in a position where I'm, God, what do you want from me? I keep moving forward, but what more do you want from me? What else do you have? Because I want to live that adventure, and I know that God wants that for me because I read that verse, and he's looking, his eyes are searching to and fro throughout the whole earth, searching for people whose hearts are loyal toward him so he can show himself strong on their behalf. And God is doing that for you and me. The closer we get to God, the more we take steps of faith, God is going to show up. These guys took a step of faith when they left, looking at a star, traveling for how long it would be, who knows, thousands of miles, because they believed that they were going to see the Son of God in person. And they did. And the same is true for you and me when we draw closer and closer to him. That's their message today. That's the message this morning. The more you draw closer to God, the more he's going to show up in your life. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your word. God, it's impossible to have preserved the word, the Bible, the way you did over thousands of years, and yet it's true. It remains the same. It never changes, God, because it's your love letter to you and me, to all of us. God, you gave us the greatest gift ever. Because you're always there seeking and desiring to know us more. Lord, give us the faith to trust you in our lives, to step out believing you're there ready to catch us no matter what's going on. You're not going to let us down. You're not going to fail us. You're going to be there. When they got to the end of the star, God, you were there without fail. Thousands of years of studying, lifetimes spent studying, God, and it was all true. Because you don't fail, and you're not going to fail us. Thank you, God, for being that God in our lives. If we just remain in attitude of prayer for just a moment, this is our opportunity to draw closer to God today. And I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know what you're going through. But I've seen a lot of things happening in our church lately. And among different individuals. And we're all going through struggles and trials. Personally, I think Satan doesn't want this church to grow. I think he doesn't want the Word of God to grow in our hearts and in our lives, and he's doing everything possible to keep that from happening. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in those that are close to me. Whether it's through the trials we're going through or the apathy to draw close to God. But I just thought today, in this moment, maybe we can just pray about that. Because God hasn't left us. We may not see him right now, but maybe he's just beyond the blanket that's covering us. And maybe he wants to do something even greater in your life. And I want to encourage you right now to hang in there. Don't give up. Keep seeking him. Because there are greater days to come. Not because of what we're able to do, but because of what God is able to do in your life. And if you're going to believe in him a little, go all the way. Put everything into God. Because that's how he works. When we trust him, that's when the great things happen. God, I don't know who needs your strength today. But God, would you give us your strength? Encourage the one who needs encouragement right now. Strengthen the one whose hands are heavy. Lord, uplift our spirits. Give us hope, God, when we don't see it. God, we do say we believe in you. We need to see you, God, in our lives. Give that hug to the person who needs to know they're still loved by their Creator and the God who is in heaven. God, we believe in you. We trust in you. And we're putting all of our faith in you, Lord. God, thank you for hearing our prayer. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, the most precious gift of all. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray.